Welcome in, college football fans. It's time again for the Top 25 show brought to you by First and Long College Football Show. We are your one stop shop for everything college football throughout the week. And today we've got our updated Week 7 Top 25 list. I am your co host, Marcus. There's your other co host, Mason. Mason, how you doing today, bud?
Man, I'm doing good. Doing good. Wish we had some football to watch tonight, but it was a good week. We had some exciting games, and the top 25 is getting all mixed up. We got a new number one, a new old number one that we're releasing or revealing tonight in our top 25 release, and some new teams joining the top five. And yeah, it's pretty it's a pretty good mix of teams. I know, I had a lot of trouble. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of trouble finding teams to put in the top 25 because it seems like there are so many that have one or two losses now that you don't want to put in. And then, you go to take them out of the top 25 and replace them with another team and there's nobody there, so you're kind of left, you know, keeping some in. But I mean, at this point in the season, you're not going to have 25 undefeated teams. It's just not going to happen. So, you try to analyze as best as you can and figure it out. Figure out who the 25 are, and hope that you're right. Next week, guess what, folks? It'll look all different once again. So, if your team didn't make it this week and you feel like they should be in it, well, there's always next week.
Yeah, well, I think all these rankings are pretty fair. Obviously you could interchange a few here and there, and I think there would be an argument for it. But I mean, that's about all it would be. It would be an argument. I mean,
Yeah.
we're 6 weeks into the season. A lot of teams have played 5 or 6 games, obviously, and we're halfway there, and there's still half of all this stuff to be revealed, what these teams are made of, and there's going to be injuries, and there's going to be all kinds of things that get in the way of some of these teams, and they're going to cannibalize them, each other. So, um, without further ado, we'll throw this on there. Actually, one thing. So last night we did our Week 6 reaction show, and if you missed that, that's under the live portion of our page. You can go check that out and check out our reactions to all those Week 6 games. But there was a couple games that we couldn't get in there, and one in particular that I'm thinking about is USC playing Arizona last night. Did you end up getting to catch some highlights on that today? That was a triple overtime thriller, and most people missed it because it came on so late.
Yeah, I tried to stay up and watch it. I think I fell asleep late in the third quarter, and I was just like, I feel pretty good about USC being able to come back. They kind of the offense was sleeping that first half, and they kind of got some things rolling and got some momentum. And I thought, I think that they're. I feel good, putting my head and resting my head on this pillow, and I feel good, and like I'm going to sleep well at night, knowing that USC is going to eventually win this game and maybe even cover. Who knows? But that wasn't the case. Their defense continued to kind of stand around. It seemed like, and not really cover anybody. And so, once again, another rough outing for USC. It really a missed field goal saved them the game. They really should have lost. There was a field goal missed late. It was a pretty long field goal, but nonetheless, had Arizona been able to get it done in the fourth quarter, they would have won the game. It never would have went to overtime. So, um, it took some luck, but they found a way to win. So I'm not taking too much out of that. I still have them in my top 10. But look, this is a really really bad defense, and I think that it's going to come back to bite them somewhere down the road in this tough Pac-12 conference.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, it was some bad defense. I'll definitely grant it that, but I mean, this game was ended up in the 40s in after triple overtime. So
Hmm.
honestly, I mean, I don't think Arizona's got a very good offense.
Right.
Is more, but the USC defense actually, I mean, for a grading on a scale of USC or Lincoln Riley defenses, I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
They got a couple turnovers at least. The offense this past week, the mismanagement of time in the game, the clock management was absolutely horrible at the end of the game. USC's trying to run out there and kick a field goal to win this game. The timing's all off, getting false starts, then get the field goal blocked. I mean, it was just a really, really sloppy performance. Much like Miami, and we're going to get to the top 25 here in just a second, but Miami last night, we were doing the show whenever the game was ending, so didn't get all the details at the
Right.
moment of what was going on. But all Miami had to do last night was kneel the football,
Yeah.
and they win the game, and they decide they're going to run it. What are you doing?
I don't know. That's
I'm seeing videos from players on the sidelines saying, "What the F are we doing?"
yep.
And what made it even worse was the announcer in the game is saying before they do it, "This is a bad idea. Shouldn't be doing this. You should take a knee." No more than he says it, they fumble and give it away.
Yep.
And then they're playing cover 3. Cover 3.
Yeah.
And they let a Georgia Tech wide receiver get behind them. How the hell do you get behind a cover 3? That I don't know. And especially one with the athletes that Miami has.
Right.
Absolutely inexcusable.
Really good
This
safeties at
isn't a-
Miami. With I know James Williams and I forget the other safety's name, but 2 really good safeties, and it's just, man,
Don't
you
they
know,
have that Cam dude? What's his name? Cam something
I
as a
can't
safety, isn't that him?
I can't remember his name, but
Anyway,
I know
but
it's a good
the
secondary.
point is, yeah, it's a decent secondary, and even a bad secondary can keep Georgia Tech wide receiver in front of them in a cover 3.
Mhm.
There's no absolute burners out there or studs that are going to be drafted or anything like that for
Yeah.
Georgia Tech. There's no excuse for that, and Mario Cristobal, there's no excuse for on his behalf. This isn't a first year head coach here, okay? Um, this is a guy who's been around the block, and that how do you put your stamp on that? At the end of the game in the press conference, he said we should have took a knee, and I think that's pretty obvious. But I guess at least he owned up to it. So, with all that being said, we're caught up on our college football recap and reactions. As I said, please go check that out on our playlist there. And if you don't mind, at this point in the video, we'd really like to ask you to give us a thumbs up, please. That really, really helps a show like this. You just don't understand how much it helps. It helps the YouTube algorithm and helps get the word out there for us, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Without further ado, let's put up our top 25, and let's start from 25, and we'll work our way up, and we'll kind of talk about some of these. We've already talked about all these teams yesterday for the most part, so we'll talk about some of them and maybe talk about what they got coming up this week just a little bit. But we just want to get our top 25 out there. Excuse me. At number 25, we have Kentucky Wildcats. Number 24, Kansas Jayhawks. Number 23, the Tennessee Volunteers. Number 21, we have LSU and Missouri tied at that 21 spot. Look, every one of these, you can make an argument for them not being in the top 25.
Mhm.
There's in some of these, I think there's more of an argument for them not to be in the top 25 than there is. But who else you going to put there, man?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to friggin' put somebody there. So I don't have a ton to say on each of these teams. Outlook is not looking great for Kansas. I don't know what's going on with their quarterback at this point. I don't think anybody has a real positive outlook on that situation. I think out of this group right here, I think Kentucky's got pretty good upside in this group. If they don't fall apart, if they don't let Georgia beat them twice 2 weeks in a row. And what I mean by that is after playing a physical game and getting drugged like that, hopefully they don't let it beat them next week. Tennessee, I guess everything's still in front of them. I don't fully believe in this team after some of the things I've seen. The fact that they lost to Florida, I'll never understand that. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But that's college football. LSU probably has the worst defense on this sheet, on this whole sheet right here. And there's Washington State is on here too. So that's really, really, really saying something. So what do you think about these 5? And we'll move on to the next grouping.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to give a couple of honorable mentions. One to Wisconsin, who pulled out an 11-point win over Rutgers, which doesn't sound that exciting, but Rutgers is a pretty good team this year. You know, they're four and
Yeah, they're not
two
bad.
after the loss to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is now 4-1. So you know, good job to Luke Fickell. I'm not ready to put them in yet, but you know, maybe if they get another win this week, we can start talking about that. And then the other one is West Virginia. You know, they had a bye this week, so if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you know, I just went back and watched the TCU game, and you know they kind of handled TCU, you know, which TCU is pretty bad. This isn't the same TCU of last year, but for West Virginia, I thought that was really good, and you know they beat Pitt, you know, and their only loss so far this year is to Penn State, and they've kind of handled some teams, you know, outside of that. So I think that they've got a couple of winnable games coming up, looking ahead to their schedule, and I'm excited to see what they're able to do moving forward. So just keep that on your radar, you know, with West Virginia. Um, all right, so
Yeah, I might should have put them in there, honestly,
I
now that I think about it.
I know I think that had they played this week, I probably would have, but I went back and saw they had a bye, and I'm like, you
Yeah,
know what?
out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yep, yep. We'll just put that in your back pocket for next week. I think that they'll be able to win this coming up week, and we'll be talking about them. But all right, so at 25, Kentucky, like you mentioned, Kentucky's won. Look, it's really tough to get 50 points scored on you and stay in the top 25. You know, I don't know that they deserve it realistically. They've got to go face Missouri this week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see if they're able to continue.
Yes, you're correct.
Is it Missouri? Okay. So let's see. That's going to be a real test for both teams, really. You know, Missouri coming off of a tough loss against LSU, Kentucky coming off of a tough loss against Georgia. Um, it's really the battle for the second best in the SEC East right now, in my opinion. You know,
Yeah.
Tennessee's already lost to Florida, so it's going to take a while for them to reestablish their, you know, seat at the table, I guess, in second place at least. Um, but yeah, speaking of Tennessee, that's another team that I wanted to take out, but I don't have anywhere to put them. I don't have anybody to replace them with. So you know, I don't know why. I did take a peek at the AP poll, and I don't know why, but they've got Tennessee at like 18. You know, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, what? Where are they getting this? Like, I don't see it. I really don't. They also, who was the other team?
Maybe if they'd have
Um,
been close with Florida, I maybe would be considering them a little higher, but they got their ass smoked.
Right. They also had Miami at 25, you know, after that embarrassing loss to Georgia Tech. So I don't know
Wow.
what they're doing over there at the AP poll, but um anyway, so Missouri, LSU, I think they're in a good spot. Top 25 still. I think they're both still pretty good teams, and LSU's kind of figuring some things out. Missouri, it's just a much improved Missouri team, you know, and they should still be in the top 25 just because they lost to what is realistically probably the a top 5 offense on this sheet in LSU
Mhm.
and Jaden Daniels. That's really not that bad. You know, I think Missouri is a kind of a upper middle tier SEC team right now. You know, they're not really a contender in my opinion, but they'll sneak up and get a few teams here and there, and maybe that's who they are. You know, moving forward. But I really like this Missouri team. They're a fun team to watch. If you haven't had a chance to watch them yet, I highly recommend it. But you know, and they're a pretty tough defense. They're able to get some stops most of the time. They just ran into a buzzsaw in LSU's offense and Jaden Daniels last week. So I'm not going
Yeah.
to discredit them too much because of that. I think they're still a really tough team.
Yeah. Let's keep it moving. Uh, Number 19, we got a two-way tie there, Notre Dame and Washington State. Number 18, we got the Duke Blue Devils. Number 17, UCLA Bruins. And number 16, the Utah Utes. This whole row right here is I don't feel crazy confident about anybody in this row. I know Duke has got a showdown coming up with Louisville. coming up, and I don't know that Riley Leonard's going to be back. Notre Dame, I don't think, has an offense worth a flip. Washington State is a one-trick pony. UCLA has a freshman quarterback that I like, but he's a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And the Utah Utes don't have any offense whatsoever. So they're just kind of a sitting duck at this point. I mean, they're just waiting to get knocked out of the top 25, I think. Cam Rising's not coming back. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much in a nutshell, that's how I got those 5
Yeah.
teams. What do you think about them?
I think you kind of nailed it. It's interesting that the 21 through 25 teams, there's more to say about than there are 16 through 20. But there's just nothing to say about these teams. They're pretty bland. They're kind of pretty bland good teams, right? A lot of teams would kill to be in the top 25, right? But
these are all teams that have lost a game in a big matchup to a team that's ranked higher on this sheet.
That's right.
Pretty much, other than I guess Duke lost to Notre Dame, but they're ranked right behind them. So everybody here is just a team that's been knocked down a rung by a team that's up a rung from them. So I mean, all these teams, everything is in front of them for the most part. Notre Dame's not going to no playoff at this point, but and they don't have a conference championship. So let me take that back. There's nothing in front of Notre Dame, but the rest of these,
there's really nothing for them to play for. But maybe a New Year's Six bowl, maybe.
Yeah.
Doubt it.
If they want to go get killed in that, then
it's tough to get up and play every week too. When you've got nothing to play for. So let's kind of keep an eye on Notre Dame to see how much motivation there is to continue to win against a USC and a Clemson. Moving forward, they still have some tough games.
No doubt. They got some really tough matchups coming up that I don't think are in their favor. Let's keep it going. Number 15, Oregon State Beavers. Number 14, the Louisville Cardinals. As another YouTuber would call them, the bird with teeth. 13, Ole Miss. Number 12, North Carolina Tar Heels, who put a whooping out there this weekend. And tied for number 10, we got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Kind of my take on these teams right here. Oregon State, I think, is a pretty good team. Obviously, we got them ranked in 15 spot. Got some big matchups coming up. We're going to really see what they're made of coming up. Louisville Cardinals are undefeated, just obviously knocked off Notre Dame this past weekend. They've got some tough matchups coming up. Looks like they're probably going to luck up against Duke, as Riley Leonard will probably be missing that game, or if he does play, I seriously doubt he'll be 100% after that high ankle sprain that he suffered against Notre Dame on the last play of the game. Ole Miss, hey, guess what? They can hang 50 on you. Just ask LSU. But that's considering you have a horrible defense. So, But hey, look, we got to have them there. They've lost one game, right? And they've lost to a team that's higher ranked than them in the Alabama Crimson Tide, which we'll get to in just a second. The North Carolina Tar Heels are undefeated. Miami has paved a way for this team to go straight to Charlotte. And I tell you what, if Florida State and North Carolina faced off today, I think I'd probably pick North Carolina right now. I really, really do. So I can't wait to see what that matchup looks like later on down the road. And then at number 10, Alabama. Look, this game this past weekend, in some aspects, was the best we've seen down in Alabama. Definitely the best version of Jalen Milroe that we've seen. But I also feel like this is a defense in Texas A&M that this is a secondary that just gave up 48 points to Miami a few weeks ago. So, I felt like it was a really well played game by Alabama, but a bad game played by Texas A&M defense. I felt like they had a horrible game plan, although they did stop the run, and that was concerning for me. And Alabama, who prides himself as a power run team this year, only ran for 30, 40 yards on Saturday. I think that's a bit of a problem, honestly. But with all that being said, Milroe threw for about 300 yards, and that's a minor miracle right there, I think. I think they're getting a little more used to his style of play. I don't think you're ever going to have a offensive system set up for him where he's got 3, 4, 5 reads to get through, and he's going to get to the third or fourth. I just don't ever see that really happening for him. So looks like Alabama is kind of bringing this offense to scale for him, and that they're going to need to run the ball better. But the door's just wide open for Alabama now. I mean, what's LSU going to slow them down? No, they're not going to slow them down. And Alabama's got an offense or a defense that can slow LSU down. So I think they'll beat them. And it looks like the door's wide open for Alabama to head to Atlanta at this point after beating Texas A&M this past weekend. What do you think about this grouping right here?
Yeah, I mean, going back to Alabama, I think that what they're kind of showing is a propensity to be able to get to take whatever the defense is giving them. They showed that they can pass the ball if Texas A&M is playing the run, right? They can beat you over the top if they need to. That was a little bit of a surprise, and they haven't been able to do that, So I was surprised to see that they did not establish the run game, so that was pretty surprising as well. But when that wasn't working, they were able to beat Texas A&M over the top, so that was good to see if you're a Tide fan.
Well, before we get off this topic, I just want to say this on something that you're saying right here. I agree with you, and they did take what the defense is giving them. But did nobody tell Texas A&M that the one ball that Jalen Milroe can throw is the deep ball?
Yeah.
I mean, why? What are we doing? Every intermediate pass he threw was shit.
Yes.
Every single intermediate pass he threw was shit.
Yeah.
And then and so they're leaving Jermaine Burton 1-on-1, no safety help.
Right.
I don't understand. I think it was a horrible game plan by the Texas A&M defense in that game.
I honestly think
I hate to reiterate that game. We just went over it the other day, but I mean, damn.
I honestly think that Texas A&M's game plan to prevent the deep ball was to get to the quarterback, and they did it, I think, 4 times. They created some pressure. I think that's what they wanted to do, is just get him off balance. Don't give him any time, and then he won't be able to get the deep ball. And they just probably didn't execute that quite as well as they would have liked. That's what it looked like to me. But moving on, so you mentioned North Carolina. I think this is a really good North Carolina team that's finally coming into their own on offense. We're starting to see them put up 40, 50 points a week, now for the past couple of weeks. So if that trend continues, then yeah, the ACC better watch out. Ole Miss is another one of those teams. Like, I don't know if they're really 13th, on this list, but they've got some issues on defense and offensively. I mean, they put up like 20 something points against Arkansas. So that was a really surprising under that hit, is Arkansas and Ole Miss. Who would have thought that? But and then Louisville, I mean, congrats to Louisville beating Notre Dame, who we thought was a tough matchup. I feel like sometimes we kind of get in this spin where, we say, oh, well, Notre Dame really wasn't that good, but I think that two things can be true at the same time. And I think that Louisville's a lot better than at least I expected them to be in this game. Yeah. So that I think that they're a pretty good team, going back and watching that game. And then Oregon State, in true Pac-12 fashion, that game ended up with 92 total points scored, which was surprising. That it was surprising that Oregon State gave up 40 points to Cal, in what's been a pretty good defense all year. But they're also able to score 52. So that was pretty promising for their offense.
Yeah. It was late night on the West Coast. They didn't think anybody saw that.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see that. That was a dream.
Yeah.
Tied for number 10, we got USC. Number 9, the Texas Longhorns. Number 8, Penn State Nittany Lions. And tied for number 6, we've got Washington and Oregon. So we already talked about USC at the top of the show just a little bit. I actually thought, like I said, it was a little bit better of a defensive performance than what I've seen. At least they got some turnovers this past Saturday. But the offense was garbage, minus Caleb Williams. I mean, this guy just put the team on his back like a backpack and just carried him to the finish line. And he's amazing. I have to say he's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. I just have to go ahead and say that. And whatever NFL team does end up getting Caleb Williams, they're getting a damn gem. Number 9, Texas Longhorns. I think we learned a little bit about Texas Longhorns. I think we learned they're not as good as what we thought they were this past weekend. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
and that's my opinion. A lot of people will say they just ran into another really good team, and I think these teams are both. I think these teams are both better than good, but I don't think either one of them is elite. Um, but it's week 6, so or going into week 7, so there's time to change that and to morph into a championship team. It's gonna be about the response from both of these teams. How does this Oklahoma team handle the the wealth and the riches of winning that game that they won this past weekend, the Red River Shootout? And how does Texas handle taking that loss? Are they going to be able to take it on the chin, and make their knees stop wobbling, or are they going to let the wheels fall off of the wagon? Both of these teams have pretty easy schedules. I think headed on into the conference championship at the end of the year. Big 12 is horrible. There's really Oklahoma and Texas, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, as well, and as you can see, there's not another Big 12 team in the top 25 here. With all that being said, everything that Texas wants to accomplish is in front of them. Their back's just against the wall now, and we'll just have to see how they respond to that. But absolutely fantastic game this past weekend that they were on the losing end of. Penn State, really nothing's changed for me as far as Penn State. Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, we're going to get our answers at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And until then, we're not going to get any true definitive answers in that unless one of them takes a loss that they shouldn't. And I don't foresee that happening. I just really, really don't at this point. And then tied 6, Washington, Oregon. That game is this week, isn't it, Mason?
It is. Yep.
Man, buddy, that's going to be a big one now.
Yep.
That's going to be a big one. I cannot wait to watch. Both of these teams were off last week too, so neither team played. They're scheming each other up, dude. This is going to be a freaking showdown.
Yeah.
Who is the home team here? Do you know?
It is in Washington. It's in Seattle.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then I give advantage Washington. We'll break that game down later this week. Y'all come on back now, and we'll talk about that one. That one's going to be the game of the weekend, and everybody, most people's eyes, I would think. What do you think about that grouping right there?
USC, like I said at the top of the show, I think that they're going to get beat at some point. I think that they're going to end up being, kind of a 10 to 20 type team by the end of the season. But for right now, hey, they escaped with a narrow victory. Texas, I agree with you that I agree that they have a chance to get better throughout the rest of the season. I disagree in a sense that that they were a bad team, that they look like a bad team, right now. I think that 3 turnovers, three balls that didn't bounce their way kind of really gave Oklahoma the win here, and I look forward to them the rest of the year to continue on this and build on it. Penn State had a bye this week, and then they've got Massachusetts coming up, so they're just going to stay put really until they go and face Michigan or Ohio State. And then we got the big game, as you mentioned, Oregon and Washington. I think I'm on Oregon side, you're on Washington side, but I'm excited to preview this week and we'll go through the numbers with you and figure out where we're at heart wise and where the numbers kind of have us head wise, and this is one of the most exciting matchups of the season, in my opinion, yet. And it's kind of ironic that they're both tied for 6. I think that they are pretty evenly matched in different ways. But you've got Oregon that's kind of the more balanced team, and then Washington that's super effective on offense, and they do some great things up front on defense, but they're a little bit more heavy and lopsided in certain areas on both sides of the ball. So we'll break that thing down on Tuesday. I welcome everybody to come and join us on Tuesday. Come and join us live and tell us what you think about this game, and even come and join us. Come on video or If you don't want to be on video, you can just come and join us with your audio, and let's talk about these upcoming games because it's another pretty good week coming up.
Yeah, just one quick little preview right now for anybody that's betting numbers. The early lines are out for Oregon and Washington. Honestly, the lines have probably been out for a while, but this is the first I've looked at them. That game's going to be played at 3:30 in Seattle, but right now Washington is a 3-point favorite in that game, which I think you get about 2 to 2.5 for home game. So
what's the
pretty
money
much
line?
That's plus 135.
Ooh.
Kind of actually a little higher than I would think.
Yeah.
Washington on the line is minus 160.
Wow. They're
So
really high on Washington. Okay.
very, very high on Washington there. The over-under is sitting at 67.5 on that one. So they're expecting some scoring, obviously, as I would as well. I wouldn't pick that one to necessarily be a defensive struggle. Let's get into this top five here. I think fairly predictable here. Tied for number 4, we got Florida State and Michigan. Number 3, we've got the Oklahoma Sooners. Boomer Sooner, baby, in the top 3 again. It's been a while. Number 2, Ohio State. And number 1, Georgia. Georgia, we barely had time to miss you.
Yeah.
But we did miss you. All right, well, I'll get the easiest one out of the way. Georgia looked like the best team in the country this past week. And I don't think, unless you're just hating, I don't think you could argue that point, really. This was a big-time ranked matchup. You know, I hear a lot of people saying, well, it was Kentucky. Georgia always does that to Kentucky. Well, I'm going to tell you something. On our page, we had a bunch of comments from people picking Kentucky. So, you know, you say what you want to say, but there was a ton of people picking Kentucky and Kentucky to cover. And I didn't bet on the game, but if I would have picked Kentucky to cover. So
well, and they don't always do this to Kentucky. I mean, historically, Kentucky's played Georgia really close. Last year, this game was 16-6. So
right. Show me that you haven't been paying attention without telling me that you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
Because 13-3, I think, right? Wasn't that what it was last year? 13-3.
Last year was 16-6, and then
16-6.
Yeah, I remember they were all kind of low scoring, but Kentucky had only scored 1 touchdown in the past 4 games.
The year before that, it was real ugly too because it was raining real bad.
Yep.
I remember. And everybody's like, well, Georgia barely beat Kentucky.
Yeah, it was like,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, now we beat the hell out of them. It's like, well, but it's Kentucky, though. Yeah, well, they were undefeated. So, and they were ranked, and they're still ranked in the top 25, even though they got half 100 hung on them by Georgia. So, obviously, we're not the only ones in that same frame of thought. Like I said, you'd have to be a hater to not see what happened this past weekend out there on the football field in between the lines. Number 2, we're talking about Ohio State. You know, they were in kind of a tough matchup this weekend with Maryland, and then just kind of just tore it up, honestly, in the fourth quarter. 17 points in the fourth quarter, 17-0 run there in the fourth. Ohio State polishes off Maryland. Obviously, Oklahoma, we know why they're there. Beat Texas this past week. And look, I don't think Texas is a bad team, and I don't think Oklahoma's a bad team. I don't think either one of them are national championship caliber. And I'm just going to, maybe this year, considering that, there's not like a bunch of elite teams running around or whatever. Yeah, maybe they're, can hang or whatever. But in the last few years, if you look back at a 2019 LSU, a 2020 Bama, a 21 Georgia, a 22 Georgia, neither one of those teams are anywhere close to that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm at this point. Oklahoma and Texas, that's great that you're trying to win the Big 12, and I know it's been a long time since Texas has won the Big 12. It's been over a decade, so I get the excitement for that, and that is a good goal, and that's where it all starts. But whenever you're in the top 10, then we're weighing you on a different scale, and so you got to just kind of understand that we're not weighing you against Kansas. Obviously, Oklahoma's better than Kansas. Texas is better than Kansas. But are you better than Georgia, though? Are you better than Michigan, though? that's what we're weighing out here, and that's just kind of where I'm at. And I feel the same way about Florida State, who's tied for number 4 on this list. I think Florida State's cruising for a bruising. I really, really do. I don't believe I watched the highlights, but I don't think they covered this past weekend again against Virginia Tech. And speaking of not covering, Michigan has covered, I think, the last couple of weeks, but took them a few weeks to get everything going. And Michigan is like the definition of somebody who's playing with their food so far this year, like literally playing with it, making little shapes with their spaghetti noodles, drawing a happy face on there, saying I made a happy plate, all that type of thing. That's what Michigan's been doing this year. They've been trying on different things, and I guess that's a luxury you get whenever you don't even play any Power 5 non-conference opponents, and the Big Ten takes it really, really easy on these powerhouses the first few games of the year in conference play. But you have to look at what they've done to the people that they have played, and they have absolutely throttled and dominated everybody that they played.
Yeah.
And it hasn't always been a 50-something to 7 score, although it was this weekend. They put up 52, I think, this weekend. But their defense has just had a stranglehold on every opponent. I think I heard this stat the other day. Michigan's 60% of their snaps this year have came with a 14-point lead.
Wow.
I mean, that's just friggin' unbelievable show of dominance there. And I think they're on track to win the Big Ten again this year, honestly.
Yeah.
As it looks right now. So, what do you think about this top group? And we'll get out of here and get geared up for Week 7 matchups later on this week.
That's right. So, starting with Michigan, I do see why people have them at 2. I just think that their body of work so far hasn't in comparison to these other teams who have now won some pretty big games, and
Right.
you may look at Georgia and say, well, it was Kentucky, but which I get, okay, but they really handled Kentucky, and handled a top 25 team, and Michigan hasn't had that on their schedule yet. Now, once they win that game, yes, I'll move them up to 2 because I do think that they are one of the best power rated teams right now in the country, and I do think, like you said, it looks like they're going to win the Big Ten. I mean, they look like the best team in the Big Ten. From a
and I
power
can prove it right
perspective.
now. If they played anybody else in this top 5 other than Georgia, you'd pick Michigan, wouldn't you?
I would. Yep, I would.
I mean, and I would too, but this is a ranking and not a power rating. So
That's right.
just know that, folks. You got to understand the difference.
That's right. So, I'm excited to see Michigan continue. If they don't end up winning the championship this year, it'll be a huge loss, because they're peaking right now. They've got a lot of experience that they're not going to get back. So this is kind of the year for Michigan, and the pressure is going to build up, and I think over at Ohio State, they're being told they're not tough, and they've lost to Michigan, 2 years in a row now for the Big Ten, and they've got to have their backs against the wall, and they're ready to strike. And then you got Penn State, who's also peaking. They've also got a lot of experienced, talented players on both sides of the ball. So we're headed for some real blows in the Big Ten, and I'm excited to see it. Florida State. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, I just had this epiphany with Florida State as they were kind of playing around with Virginia Tech this past week. That Florida State's just not that good. Let's be real. Let's be real here, okay? And I haven't been very high on Florida State all year long. Clemson, who barely, who was it that they played this week? Gosh, who was it?
It was Syracuse last week.
Yeah, it was. Dadgummit, no, I can't find it. Somebody that they should have beat pretty handedly.
I can look it up real quick.
And I'm missing it now. But anyways, for the past couple of weeks now, it was Wake Forest. They were 21 point favorites. They won by 5 points. They scored 17 points scored 17 points on Wake Forest. So you can't tell me that the Clemson win that they really should have lost that game. If it weren't for a couple of turnovers, Florida State's losing that game against Clemson, right? The LSU game was really close. LSU's defense is garbage. They're hot garbage, and their offense wasn't as good as it is right now. They weren't clicking like they are now. That wasn't a great win. So you go back to their two marquee huge wins, and they don't look that good. They don't look as good as they did at the time, and I think that people are kind of forgetting that. And then you look at Boston College. They almost lost to Boston College. They scored some points late in this game against Virginia Tech, but they were kind of sleeping for a while and ended up winning by 22 points. But they were, I think, 26-point favorites against Virginia Tech, so didn't cover there. But my point is, I don't think that Florida State is that good. I think that they are going to get beat by one of these other teams in the ACC. I don't think that it's a long shot to say Miami could beat them. But North Carolina to me looks like the better team. But anyways, I don't like Florida State being in the top five. I think that they are going to get beaten here very soon, and I just want to kind of point that out, kind of put that in your back pocket, and let's pay attention to Florida State moving forward, because in retrospect, I don't think that they're as good as some people think that they are. I don't have them in my top five. But all right, so then you've got Oklahoma, huge win in the Red River rivalry. They benefited from a few turnovers from Texas, but I think that this is still a really good Oklahoma team, and they're built behind their quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. And I'm going to tell you right now, if as a Georgia fan, right, and Georgia, we've got them both at number one. They're the number one team in the country in our eyes. And between Oklahoma and Texas, I would rather face Texas, because Oklahoma has Dylan Gabriel and he's able to do multiple things. And we saw how Georgia struggled against Auburn with a quarterback that can run the ball. So, yeah, I think that Texas maybe overall has better athletes and is a more balanced program. But matchup wise, I think that I would rather face Texas than Oklahoma as a Georgia fan. So I think that Oklahoma has a better shot at beating Georgia than Texas, just because of Dylan Gabriel, really, and what he's able to do in multiple ways. And then you got Ohio State. Their body of work's been pretty solid so far this year. I could really see Ohio State being as low as 6 or 7 on this list. It's to me, it's a power rating. Their defense has been pretty outstanding. They struggled with Maryland this week, but like you said, they kind of late. They were able to pull away on both sides of the ball. They really shut Talia Tagovailoa down. I mean, the whole second half, he was shut down completely. Couldn't run the ball, couldn't pass the ball. It was a pretty good defensive outing in that second half. And then Kyle McCord got the offense moving as well. So I look forward to seeing Ohio State continue to grow. And then you got Georgia. We all saw what they did against Kentucky. It was very dominant. I think Carson Beck was in for like 2 series after the second half, and then that was it for him. And Georgia was still able to put up 51 points. So a really solid outing. We've been saying that Georgia's due to cover, first of all, but also to have a start to finish strong offensive performance. They were able to do that, and they were also able to do that on defense. And even though they did give up 2 touchdowns, which is a little bit more than I think Georgia would like. But they kind of, they stopped the running game, I think, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I think that Kentucky came in with the game plan of, look, Georgia they're going to try to stop the run. They're probably going to stop the run. We got to pass the ball. And they did a pretty good job of that, but still held Devin Leary to, I think it was 160 yards or so in the air. So not really moving the ball too much on Georgia. It was just a complete game for Georgia, and that's why we've moved them up now from, I think they were 4 or 5 last week, to back to number 1. They kind of showed us what we needed to see, and they showed us that they can get up for a game when they need to, and that maybe they just weren't that motivated in the past. I don't know what it was. The first 5 weeks of the year, but now they've got Vanderbilt coming up, and then a bye week, and then Florida, and then it's a pretty easy schedule from here on out. They do have Tennessee and Ole Miss to face, moving on towards the end of the year, but very manageable. I expect them to kind of stay at number one and maybe get a test in the SEC championship game.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Well, that concludes our top 25 headed into week 7. We got some really exciting matchups coming up. What I want you to do is hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything, because we're going to be having videos throughout the week. We're going to be breaking down all the games, and then we'll cut up the video and make it team specific for you guys. You can look up your team's um, video individually there for the key matchups, and cannot wait to go through some notes and make some notes and get all that topic worked up in our head and get it out to you guys later this week. I guess we're planning on having that out by Tuesday on that stuff. So look for that content to come out Tuesday. Probably be going live on Tuesday. So go ahead and jot that down and come join us and hit the link in the chat whenever you do so, and come talk some college football with us. But until then, signing off for First and Long College Football Show, I am your co-host, Marcus. There's your other co-host, Mason. Everybody have a great day and look forward to week 7 college football. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.